want to share with you this morning about the nature of being. I know that sounds weird. I considered a different title for this message that would be appropriate, and the different title would have been The Flying Spaghetti Monster. And you'll see why that would be an appropriate title for this particular message. I'm going to ask you to engage with me in thinking through what it means, listen now, what it means to be. What it means to be, to exist, right? Now, there's a big word that we want to incorporate into our vocabulary for this message and for future conversations with people. And that word is ontology. There's two Greek words there. There's onto, which means being, and then there's logos, which means speaking, or the word, or teaching, or thinking about whatever the previous part was. So ontology is thinking and speaking about what? Being, the nature of being. And so an easy way to remember what ontology is all about, just turn to the person next to you and say, you be. Go ahead, I'm waiting. You be, which means you exist. There you are right next to me, existing. Okay, so the question in ontology becomes, how or in what way do you exist? What's going on in you? That person sitting next to you and you. You be, I be, and all of us are in a becoming process. We be, that is, we exist. And our existence is malleable. That means that it is constantly being shaped. It's in process. In fact, it's not an exaggeration to say that by the time we're done spending these few minutes together, you will be or exist in a slightly different form than you existed before we spent this time together. And it's not just this time we're spending together. Any interaction, literally any interaction, you go to buy your groceries, you exchange a smile with the person taking the money and they give you your groceries, and interaction has occurred. Hopefully it was a pleasant interaction, and that little pleasant incremental exchange shaped you into a slightly different thing, being, person than you were just moments ago. Literally, somebody can say a sentence to you and alter your brain chemistry and therefore your neuroplasticity. If I say to you, hey, you're very cool and I like you, your brain chemistry changes and your being, your state of being alters slightly, right? Now imagine, just work that out on a continuum. What if you were to exist in a community or in a social circle in which there's a lot of affirmation like that? Not just a momentary, kind of punctiliar, one-time event. Hey, you're cool and I really like you. And that's the only time you ever have that kind of positive encounter in your whole life. There would be an incremental change. But what if you lived in a social circle in which there's a lot of that going on? A lot of affirmation, a lot of I love you, a lot of I like you, a lot of you're amazing, a lot of I know that you made a mistake, but I forgive you. What if you were to just build that out as a continuum and live perpetually in positive relational dynamics? Do you know what would happen? Those incremental changes would take on a form that shapes you over time, and you would become beautiful. Let's say that you're naturally grumpy. Some of you are, I've noticed it. Let's say that you're naturally grumpy. Let's say that you're a grump. But if you live in a social circle in which there's a lot of affirmation and love and acceptance, right? You are gradually, like bit by bit, you are delivered from your grumpiness. That's just how life works, right? If you're raised in a home in which there are a lot of angry words, for example, and demeaning speech. You're stupid. You'll never amount to anything. How dare you? You can't do anything right. What's happening to you? Well, you are a creature of you're basically Plato. Neurologically, you are malleable. You can be shaped by what's happening around you. So if you're raised with a lot of demeaning speech, you're going to incrementally begin to believe that what's being said about you is true, especially if it's coming from authority sources like a mom and a dad, an uncle, an auntie, a nana, a papa. If the people around you, right, are telling you that you are something less, you will begin to believe that you are something less. If you're around people who tell you you're something more, you'll begin to believe that you're something more. That's how impressionable we are as human beings. Now, you, me, all of us, right now, we exist in a particular state of being. And the state of being in which we exist is happening within parameters. So there's being, and then there's, let's call this gray outer area, non-being, for example, right? Now, we exist within these parameters. All of us do, and every human being that you know exists within these parameters. So there are certain things going on in here that contribute to the overall composition of reality or being. Are you still with me? Have I lost you yet? We'll get to this flying spaghetti monster shortly. But we have to do this work. We have to do this intellectual work first in order for the punchline to make sense. Okay, so everything we experience is within this realm. Let's say it like that. And here's my challenge to you. You can't conceive of anything. You can't have a thought or an idea or a perception or even utter a sentence that is not within the parameters of what is. In other words, you can't come up with anything utterly and completely original that has no basis in reality. You can't make anything up that is pure fiction. Even your fictions are a composition of truths that you have arranged to create a fiction. Now, this will make sense, I promise, as we go on. The English poet, William Blake, articulated ontology like this. He said, everything to be imagined is an image of the truth. This was written like 100 and some years ago, so let me just put this in a sentence structure that would be more understandable for our current vernacular. Everything you can imagine is an image of something that's true. Are you still with me? Are you tracking? Okay. Everything that you can imagine or speak is an image of the truth. All falsehood rides piggyback on the truth. So anytime anybody ever tells a lie, they're lacking originality. That would be one way of saying it. They're taking some existing thing and they're bending it in the direction of untruth or falsehood or lies, right? You can't actually make anything up that isn't grounded in reality. Literally anything we say is grounded in reality, even if it's a lie. You could say it this way, that there's a big ship, and that ship, that ocean liner is called the Truth. And there are barnacles and parasites that are clinging to it as it rides through the ocean. So lies, falsehoods, are simply a hijacking of truth and turning it in a direction of falsehood. Now, you know this intuitively, don't you? Even if you've never explained it to yourself in this way, you know this to be true, and we can prove it. Okay, so nothing versus something. In the Darwinian evolution theory, the scientific mind reaches back as far as it can reach back, 13.9 billion years, they tell us, to what they call the Big Bang, the big explosion, right? And as you engage in conversation with the Darwinian evolutionist, if you ask the question, okay, the Big Bang came from where? From what? What is just 1 nanosecond before the Big Bang? You go back 13.9 billion years, and then just take one baby step back. What was there before that? And the Darwinian evolutionists will say, well, it was just all very small. Like, really tiny. Like, more tiny than a period at the end of a sentence. It was all tiny. All matter and energy was contained within that little tiny space, and then it exploded. So no matter how you reason it, track with me, that little tiny space, is it something or is it nothing? It's something. It's really small. And maybe you couldn't even see it with the naked eye, but it's really small, but it's something. And if you ask them, well, what was prior to that, the answer is either nothing or we don't know. So try to imagine nothing. Go ahead. So you should opt for the answer we don't know. Now, if you don't know, then when you ask the question, listen carefully now, if all of reality is represented by a geometric shape, let's call it a circle. If all of reality is represented by a circle, right, how much of what there is to know about reality do we collectively as human beings know? Now, you might find a really arrogant human being who might say, we know 10% of all there is to know. That's pretty arrogant. Anybody who knows anything about the nature of knowledge, epistemology, would say, that's pretty audacious. You think we know 10% of all there is to know? We don't even know a sliver of all there is to know. That is to say, we're mostly stupid. We're mostly ignorant. And we know very little of all there is to know, collectively as a human race. In fact, they have recently, the scientific community has recently, like last 10 to 15 years, has told us that 90% of the universe is made up of what they call dark matter. And 10% is the matter that we can touch and see and look at through a telescope or a microscope. But 90% of it they're telling us now is dark matter. And if you ask, well, what is it? They'll say, we don't know. Because it's dark. It's dark matter, so we don't know what it is. We can measure its existence because there's a constant exertion of gravitational pull on the mass of this dark matter. We can't see it, we can't measure it, we don't know what it is, but we know it's there, and we know it's most of what's there, but we don't know what it is. So, come back with me, just back out of that parking spot for a minute, and just if all of reality is represented in this circle, if all of reality is represented by this circle, and we ask the question, how much of all there is to know do we actually know? And let's just say that we're super arrogant, and we agree that we know 10% of all there is to know. The next question is, Is it possible that God exists in the 90% of what we don't know? Ask that question to your atheist friend, and you will find that the conversation moves to something like, what do you want for lunch? Shall we have pizza? Or sushi? Because it becomes immediately obvious that literally the most arrogant statement a human being can utter is, there is no God. How would you know? How could you possibly know? To say there is no God is to say, I have investigated personally all of reality, and I can report to you with a straight face that I have searched everywhere in all of reality, and I can tell you with great authority, there is no God. How could you possibly know that there is no God when you just confess that you don't know 90% of all there is to know? Okay, so we said all of that to say this. You can't imagine nothing because the nature of being, are you ready for it? Is something. Okay, so in Scripture we have this very, very fascinating statement by King David. It's a song, actually, so how does that, Karina, how does that get into a song? That's a depressing song. I don't know how you make that sound romantic. Okay, but this is a song, okay? It's in Psalm 14, verse 1. And David says, he's making a statement here. He says, the fool has said in his heart, there is no God, the fool. Now, he's not just calling names. He's not saying, nanner, 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 you're a fool, like children on a playground. He's making a rational observation. He's even in his emotions here. He's not pointing the finger. He's not calling names. He's not being demeaning. He's simply saying that it takes a whole lot of ignorance to make that statement. It takes a whole lot of ignorance, not stupidity, because you've noticed what I've noticed, haven't you? That you can have a PhD and be stupid, right? You can be somebody who can't even do long division, and you can be wise. Yes or no? Well, you've noticed this, I've noticed it. Okay, so this isn't a demeaning, jab at people. He's making a rational argument. He's saying, you have to be really ignorant to make this statement, and here's why. There is no God is what we would call grammatically a negation statement because of the word no. If it was the word is, there is a God, it would be an affirmation statement grammatically. This is a negation statement. There is no God. Now, I want to challenge you. I want to challenge you now. Literally, you could put anything in the place of God. Just put a blank there. What did it say? There is no God. The fool has said in his heart, there is no God. You can literally just put a blank there. And here's my challenge to you. Whatever you put in that blank becomes incoherent. You literally cannot make a rational negation statement because anything you can imagine is an image of the truth. Remember William Blake? Anything that you can conceive of or articulate with words, right? You're drawing upon what is, what exists. So try to put something there. Just put anything there. You can compose a fiction. You can say there is no flying spaghetti monster. Told you there would be a place where that would show up. There is no flying spaghetti monster. But please notice, while there is no creature that is a flying spaghetti monster, you have constructed your negation statement out of realities you are familiar with. Flight. I hope you're familiar with spaghetti because it's delicious. and the concept of monster. All of these are grounded in reality. So, at the ontological level, that is, on the level of existence or the nature of being, all negation statements are false. I mean, literally anything. You could say, there is no elephant-shaped helicopter with a propeller, I'm making this up as I go, that consumes raw nuclear energy and is light pink and wears Gap clothing. Now, the thing you just described, or I just described, does not exist, but all the parts of the thing that I just described do exist. And you can literally spend days, weeks, months, the rest of your life trying to complete that negation statement, and anything that you say, anything that you put in the blank, will be grounded in reality on some level. Which is simply to say, human beings cannot, this is an absolute impossibility, human beings cannot think in terms of nothing or non-existence or anything that would be in the category of non-being. So, at the ontological level, all negation statements are false. To say there is no God, this is what David in Psalm 14 is telling us. To say there is no God is to inadvertently confess the existence of God. Think about it this way. If God did not exist, we would never ask the question, does God exist? Let me say that again. If there is no God, the idea of his existence or non-existence would never occur to us. There's no way we could formulate the thought. Now, just like we can compose from reality a flying spaghetti monster or a pink elephant that consumes nuclear energy, just like we can compose falsehoods out of little parts of truth, right? You and I, we can do something the Bible calls idolatry. We can create a composite picture of God that is false. It's not true, right? So Richard Dawkins, voted like 2 or 3 times to be one of the most intelligent people on the planet. Richard Dawkins, the author of the New York Times best-selling book, The God Delusion, Richard Dawkins, the most vocal and popular atheist on planet Earth. That Richard Dawkins. Richard Dawkins, the evolutionary biologist. Richard Dawkins with a formidable IQ. Richard Dawkins thinks he's saying something smart when he says, well, we're all atheists. I just believe in one less God than you. Do you see what he's doing there? He's saying, you believe, you Christians, you believe in the existence of this Yahweh God, but you don't believe in Zeus, or Ishtar, or Vishnu. I don't believe in any of those gods either. I just also don't believe in Yahweh. So we're all atheists. I just believe in one less God than you. And then one of his countrymen, he's from Britain, the late and intellectually great G.K. Chesterton comes along and says to Dawkins, posthumously, of course, if there were no God, there would be no atheists. I love that so much. I can't even tell you how much I love that. I mean, to say as much as he's saying here in a single sentence is just sheer brilliance. He's essentially tapping into the ontological argument for the existence of God in this statement. He just made it simpler for anybody to understand, whether they have any academic background in ontology or not. He's just saying, listen, if there were no God, nobody would say, I don't believe in him. nobody would even ask the question, utter the statement, make any kind of judgment whatsoever about the idea. Because listen, every fiction that we compose is made up of truths. So while a composite picture of God that is capricious, that is arbitrary, like Zeus, for example. Zeus is an imaginary composition in Greek mythology that defines God in terms of the capricious and arbitrary exertion of sheer power. Zeus is equivalent to just muscle, basically. Do what I say or else. I'm God. I'm in charge. Do what I say or I'll hurt you. This is Zeus. The idea, the big macro idea of God is true. The composition of the characteristics is false. Are you still with me? I don't want to lose anybody. I'm really afraid right now. We're here. Okay. So the big idea, God is true. But the characteristics that are employed to compose the picture of God, capricious, arbitrary, that's false. So think about it like this. 2 plus 2 equals 4. Okay? 2 plus 2 does not equal 5, 6, 7, 8. Zeus, Baal, Ishtar, Vishnu, etc. Therefore, 2 plus 2 has no correct answer. Because there are wrong answers to the equation, it's not an intelligent maneuver to say, we're all atheists. I just believe in one less God than you. Which is simply to say, because there are so many wrong answers, there is no correct answer. It's not an intelligent statement to make, and it's made by a very intelligent man. Now, just because there are many wrong answers doesn't mean that there's no true answer. Here's how Paul works through this idea. He works through this idea in a number of places, but this is one that is particularly of interest for what we're trying to break down right now. This is in Romans chapter 1. Paul says, and now the context here is unbelief. People who are saying, there is no God. I don't believe in God. Therefore, I'll do whatever I jolly well please. Please don't interrupt me. That's the context here. Paul says, what may be known of God. Pause right there. What may be known of God. Well, Paul's qualifying there because there are things about God, if God in fact is God and therefore infinite, and we're finite, and what did we say earlier? We're mostly ignorant, not mostly informed. Most of what there is to know, we don't know. So what may be known of God is a qualifying statement that is essentially saying, listen, there are a lot of things we can't possibly know about God because we're finite beings. Beings, that's not beans, like frijoles, so we're talking here, being. Sorry, I didn't enunciate correctly. Just think about this. You and I don't know the nature of God. That is to say, what is God made of? That's not even a coherent sentence to say we don't know what God is made of, because God isn't made of anything. God made everything. Therefore, God is outside of the realm of the made. If God made the entire physical universe, time, space, matter, energy, if he made all of it, then he's not synonymous with any of it. He's outside of what he made. Just like you wouldn't expect to find Steve Jobs, may he rest in peace, in the iPhone, but you would expect to find evidence of his ingenuity, his creativity, his mind, his imagination, his design sense, his preference for sans serif fonts rather than serif fonts. You're going to find in the iPhone evidence of an intelligent, creative person, but you're not going to find the person in what the person created. God made the universe, therefore God, in some sense, is outside of the universe. So, what may be known of God, implying that there are things we can't know, right? What may be known of God is manifest where? Where? In them. That is, in the human being. In the activity of your mental and emotional process. You have a conscience in you, in them, in human beings. There's activity inside of you and me, right? Conscience, for example, tells us there's good and there's evil, there's right and there's wrong. Have you ever done something wrong and then you felt bad about it? Like, I think I should apologize for that. I think that wasn't nice the way I said that. That was rude, that was cruel, that was self-centered, right? If you're on a public transportation and you see a fully healthy 22-year-old young man rippling with muscles, and he steps on the bus or the tram or the subway, and there's a frail old woman that's 89 years old that can hardly walk, and there's one seat, and he shoves her out of the way, and he sits in it. Does anything happen inside of you? Is there anything in you that occurs? If you're a narcissistic psychopath, like this young man, nothing happens inside of you. You just go back to surfing the internet on your phone. You don't care. But if you're in touch with the activity of your conscience, would that not just make your blood boil? Isn't that wrong? Intrinsically not wrong, not culturally wrong. Like, is there some culture on earth where you can find where that's okay? Is there some culture on earth where young, healthy young men can shove old ladies out of the way and take their seat? Is there some culture where people celebrate that? No. Because there are things that we know are wrong. How do we know some things are right and some things are wrong? How do we know these things? Apart from reading a Bible or going to a church, or if you never go to church, if you never read the Bible, if you're raised an atheist like I was raised, when I took my friend's dad's wallet that was full of cash, my first thought was, yay, candy for eternity. My second thought was, I shouldn't take this, it's not mine. And I wasn't even raised in a religious home. I was raised by drug addicts, for crying in your soup. Nobody ever told me to do anything or not to do anything. There was no discipline in my home. I wasn't raised, I just happened. My mom sent me outside and didn't care if I came back. So how did I, as a little boy, know that after I took that wallet early in the morning, it was laying right outside his dad's car door, his dad obviously dropped it, I ran home, put it under my bed, and started laying my plans for Snickers bars forever, right? And the next morning, my conscience couldn't take it. Pulled that wallet out, took it down, looked around, put it right back where I found it, and ran home. And that's with no religion. It's not religion that informs the human conscience. It's God speaking to all human hearts that informs the conscience, whether you have a religious book in your hand or not. And so, what may be known of God is manifest in them. That is, in the activity of the thinking and feeling process. Well, how is it that you can fall in love? And some of you fall in love entirely too many times. Just stop it. Stop falling in love. Don't fall in love with every single person that flashes you a smile. Just stop it. Pause right now. But it's a beautiful thing, isn't it? How is it that you can fall in love? Really fall in love with a newborn baby, for example, or a man or a woman or a friend. How is it that you can actually prefer someone's well-being above your own? What is that? If survival of the fittest is the highest law of human nature, if self-preservation is the pinnacle of reality, as in the Darwinian evolutionary worldview, if self-preservation is the highest law of human nature, why did I, as a little boy, love my mother more than my own life and tried to throw myself in between her and the big giant man that was beating her up? Why did I not care about me in favor of caring about her? Because I'm a survival of the fittest animal with no higher law than self-preservation? Or did the little boy actually love his mommy? And do you actually love anybody? Or, as Richard Dawkins would have us believe, love is the most sophisticated form of selfishness. So that you trick someone into believing that you love them so that you can control them. It's your choice. You can believe whatever you want to believe, but your belief system should be coherent. It should be rational, and it should be in touch with reality. And I'm suggesting to you what Paul is suggesting to you, that what may be known of God is manifest in the activity of the human heart and mind, for God has shown it to them. God is always in a showing process. Every time you wake up and go about your day, God is showing you things in your conscience, in your mind, in your heart. There's these little prompts. Don't talk to her like that. Get that tone out of your voice. That will wound her. Don't raise your hand to that little human and hurt them. Don't walk out of the grocery store singing a hymn to Jesus because they gave you $20 too much in change. Go back and give it back. It's not yours. Why is there all this activity? Well, because God is constantly showing. He's constantly communicating to us. So, Paul says, he concludes with verse 20, for since the creation of the world, that's God's invisible attributes. What are invisible attributes? Kindness, mercy, love, generosity. For since the creation of the world, God's invisible attributes are clearly seen. By who? Paul's point is by everyone. You can deny the truth, but you do know it. Right? For since the creation of the world, God's invisible attributes are clearly seen, being understood by the things that are made, including your own nature as a human being, the activity of your heart and mind, even his eternal power and Godhead, so that they, that is, all of us, are without what? Without excuse. Without excuse. Unbelief in the existence of a benevolent, good God is inexcusable, Paul is saying, because you know. If you pause long enough to get in touch with the activity of your own heart and mind, even if you've never been instructed in any religion, if you get in touch with what's going on inside of you, you know. You know. You know that you were made for love and not for hate. You know that you were made for generosity and not for stinginess. You know that you were made for telling the truth and not for lying. You know that you were made to be beautiful and not whatever the opposite is of beauty. The existence of God is self-evident to the nature of reality. In closing, C.S. Lewis says it like this. C.S. Lewis, similar background to mine, he was an atheist. He did not believe in the existence of God. He is, in my estimation, and many people's estimation, the most brilliant author of the last 150 years that has emerged from Western thought. C.S. Lewis said it this way, and it's going to take you some thought. You're going to have to think this through. C.S. Lewis says, supposing there was no intelligence behind the universe, no creative mind. Let's just roll with that for a minute, he's saying. Let's just presuppose, let's just assume that there's no intelligence behind the universe and no creative mind. Let's just assume that for a second. Are you with C.S. Lewis so far? Okay, now he's going to reason with us. In that case, in what case? There's no intelligent mind. There's no creative mind behind the universe. It's all just blind chance. There's nothing to it. In that case, nobody designed my brain for the purpose of thinking. It is merely that when the atoms inside my skull happen, for physical or chemical reasons, to arrange themselves in a certain way, this gives me, as a byproduct, the sensation I call thought. Now stick with them. But if so, how can I trust my own thinking to be true? It's like upsetting a milk jug and hoping that the way it splashes itself will give you a map of London. Oops. But if I can't trust my own thinking, of course, I can't trust the arguments leading to atheism. And therefore, I have no reason to be an atheist or anything else. A Christian, a Buddhist, a Muslim, an atheist. There's literally no reason for me to be anything because there is no such thing as actual coherent thought. Rationality itself does not exist because there is nothing to it than the sporadic arrangement of atoms in my skull that give me the sensation of thought, and none of it means a solitary thing. Unless I believe in God, here's his punchline. Unless I believe in God, I cannot believe in thought. So I can never use thought to disbelieve in God. This is just a polite British way of saying to the atheist world, shut up. You don't know what you're talking about. Just stop already. You're trying to use rational arguments in favor of atheism, but your atheism begins with the premise that there's no such thing as any rational thought. None of it means anything, so how could you possibly believe anything to be true or untrue? Let us close, not with prayer, but with hedonism. And do whatever pops into our noggins that the atoms dictate, because nothing means anything. If there is no God, there is no rational reason for the existence of rationality itself. That's me summarizing the statement by Lewis. So here's the punchline. Here's the punchline. You be. There you are. There you are, just being. The person next to you also is in the process of being. All of us are being something, and we're not being something else. What are we being? We are being rational creatures that engage in deductive reasoning. We are emotional creatures that fall in love. We are moral creatures that distinguish between right and wrong. We are, therefore, creatures that exist in a world that at some point, in some way, emerged from a rational, emotional, moral mind.